Hi, I'm Janyan, and I am not afraid to say that I flipping love maths. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I went from a rendering of a set of 3D objects, all the way to a set of sculptures that are exhibited at a real-life sculpture park. Let me show you how I made them. First, let me briefly explain what I'm actually making. These are the platonic solids. They are a set of 3D shapes which have identical corners, faces and edges, a bit like regular triangles and squares in 2D. While in 2D you can just keep adding sides, in 3D there are only 5 of these shapes. The tetrahedron, with 4 faces, the hexahedron, or cube, with 6 faces, the octahedron with 8, dodecahedron with 12, and the icosahedron with 20 faces. Before I can make the actual sculptures, I need to make a set of jigs to hold the rods in place while I weld them. Each jig holds the corner of a shape, so I tilted the table saw blade to the correct angle and used an angled sledge to cut each section. I'm only showing the icosahedron here because I made that one separately first, and all of the others follow a pretty similar process. Once I had enough sections at roughly the right size, I used the stop block on the sled to get them all identical. Then I cut a support strip at the same angle to help in cutting a 45-degree slot at the router table. Then I smashed off all of the centre corners and glued them up using masking tape for clamping. I cut some 3x10mm oak strips down to about 40mm length and rounded off their ends at the disc sander. These are going to be used as integrated clamps to hold the rods in place. Seems firm enough for me, so I attached the others. And ended up with this funny spider thingy. With that jig made for the icosahedron, I did the same process for the dodecahedron, octahedron, hexahedron, and tetrahedron. Then it was on to the actual welding. I welded up a single corner first, then moved the jig over to the next corner, using the flat table to keep the whole thing aligned. I only burnt myself a little bit when moving the jigs. By some miracle, the last corner came together almost perfectly.
This is awesome! Nice! Dead pleased with that.
That went way better than expected, but I've got a little bit more work left to do, because as I was welding it, I was just tack welding each of the joints so that I could bend them into alignment. But they all aligned perfectly on the first try, so I'm going to go back, fill in those gaps, add one more bar so that I can mount this to a plinth, and then take a wire wheel just to all of the joints to clean up the welding colours.
Here you can see the mess that I made before I went round and filled them all in. The stem could be easily aligned by sighting down its length to line it up with the opposite corner. On the later ones, I went with a manual brush rather than the angle grinder. With the sculptures done, I needed to mount them, so I went down to Superior English Timber, my local sawmill. I got to pick out my own log and see it sawn on their bandsaw mill. It's really cool to see the process of going from a log to a beam. I do kind of want my own now though. Unfortunately, I couldn't hang around long enough to see them finished, but they brought them round a few days later for me to finish up. These are no joke, they weigh about 50 kilos each. To get them ready, I broke the corners with a hand plane, sanded the saw marks out, and squared up the ends. Now my saw cuts were not very well aligned, so I resorted to the electric planer, which is probably what I should have used from the beginning, as the plinths were pretty square to start with. Then I sanded out the planer marks and drilled the hole for the stem using a guide block. Finally, they were ready to go. This first one was a tester, and it got installed in a customer's garden a few weeks before the rest went to the sculpture park. I've never considered myself to be particularly artistic, but I'm really excited to see these on display. If you want to see these, or the work of far more talented artists, you can visit Showborough House Sculpture Gardens between the 5th of May and the 19th of June. And if you find something that you like, every piece is for sale. Thanks for watching!